All right, my name is Geoff Young. I want to thank Senator Tom Buford for coming from Nicholasville, and critical issue we're talking about tonight. I'd like to start out with a parable. A woman lies awake in her hospital bed. It is the middle of the night. She's in some physical pain, but her emotional pain is much worse. She has lost her baby boy in the 7th month of pregnancy. Although she had named the baby Caleb, she had not yet told the name to anyone else. It would have been her first child. Her pastor had visited earlier that evening. "Why did Jesus take my baby?" she had asked her. But the pastor hadn't been able to answer except to say that God works in mysterious ways. She had felt a terrible guilt and had asked her husband, "Was it because of those 2 sips of champagne I foolishly drank 2 weeks ago when we found out it was a boy?" Her husband had drunk the rest of the bottle. He hadn't been able to answer either. She had been taking a fertility drug because of her age, which was 35. Her doctor had just advised her not to try again to have a child of her own. And now the police had put up yellow crime scene tape around her hospital bed. A zealous prosecutor had convened a grand jury and charged her with reckless homicide in the death of her unborn child. Racked by unimaginable grief, she would now have to prove to a jury that she had done nothing to endanger the life of the fully protected legal person who had been growing inside her. It had been this way for women ever since the Republican Party's, quote, fetal personhood amendment to the Constitution had been approved by Congress and a large majority of the population. Once that constitutional amendment had passed, it had only been a matter of weeks before Roe v. Wade had been rendered entirely invalid, along with dozens of laws that had been based on the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision. All abortions in the United States were now illegal. Laws have unintended consequences. Even the most well-intentioned constitutional amendments have unintended consequences. Have we fully considered the consequences of the Republican Party's platform on the issue of abortion?
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out this evening. Nice to meet with Mr. Young and to use this facility to express our opinions upon probably many issues that we have at hand. The issue of abortion, I am pro-life. I understand that there are exceptions for rape and incest, and the doctor to make a decision with the mother and that option of life for her and the danger in her success in life thereafter. With that said, I think that my background comes from my belief in my church, my religion, my upbringing. Obviously, my mother and father probably had something to do with that. And my father passed away when I was 16, so I spent a lot of time with the minister in our church and youth directors, and constantly you can see where maybe that indication of pro-life would come in those directions, and I feel in that way. The Republican Party does have a pro-life stand, but it is not a litmus test. I noticed the other night in one of the presidential debates, Mr. Ryan made a mention of the fact when he was asked about pro-life, and then Mr. Biden had made a comment that the next president would have the option of choosing 2 new Supreme Court justices, perhaps in their length of term over the next 4 years, indicating that that may be a litmus test for one party, but sometimes what one may think was a litmus test for a certain party may find out differently, as you saw the way Supreme Court Roberts ruled on the Obamacare, saying if it's a tax, then it's certainly fine to do the health care. The issues that Frankfort have is pretty well stumbled right now in some degree with the fact of the pensions. We've got to make corrections there. We've got to earn money to see how we're going to handle this. It's probably going to be through the healthcare side of it that we will approach the main issue. It's about 53% of the cost. Many state employees, when they work 27 years, they may only be 48. They receive health care through your taxpayer dollars until they achieve the age of 65 and go to Medicare. Many legislators achieve free health care if they decide to leave the Senate after 20 years. They get a certain portion of their health care paid after they've been there a certain number of years, and the pensions are not adjusted properly. They're not in line with what the private sector is, and there's things that we can do to make some justifications. We are probably on about a 12 to 20 year course of making those adjustments to see them happen, as we have tried in the past to take to the courts to change the pension amounts and the health care amounts, and we lose those court battles based on constitutional matters. So we do try to follow the Constitution, and the judges do, so they throw the cases out of court. Other issue will be the health care, and there involves the pro-life, I guess, pro-choice issue also, as to what is going to be funded and what's not going to be funded with your tax dollars through the Obamacare. We have certain religious organizations, the Baptist organization, the Council of Catholic Churches, they have a disagreement in how they want to run their health care services and their hospitals under these directions, as you can imagine, through their certain religious beliefs and their stands in those areas. I think education is always a process in Kentucky and in the other 49 states also, and other provinces that we oversee and fund. And education is always on the minds, I think, of every session that we go into. It is the appropriation of money, it's the salaries for the teachers, it's the infrastructure for the schools. And we spend so much time dealing with that I think sometimes we lose the focus on the classroom, and the fact that the teachers need to be more engaged into the classroom, and somehow to engage the parents to come forward also and take a special interest. Many of the teachers now feel they need to have aides into their room. And I know when I was, and you all are probably too young, I'm 63, but when I was in school, it was always a couple of weeks, one mother would come forward and stay in the classroom and give the class, and they didn't have to go through a screening process, they didn't have to take a test, they didn't have to go through a background check, they just came and did it. But today, everything is different, and it's difficult for many families where you have both parents working, it can be difficult. So the issues at hand are those that I mentioned.
Thank you, Senator. I guess in my opening statement, I made a pretty serious charge that essentially that the Republican Party platform, if enacted, if the fetal personhood amendment were to be approved by the American people and put into law, I made the charge that there would be some very serious consequences. There would be social conflict. There would be extreme suffering. And I need to back up that charge. So I'm going to read to you the first two sentences of the Republican Party platform on abortion. These are the first two sentences. Faithful to the self-evident truths enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, we assert the sanctity of human life and affirm that the unborn child has a fundamental individual right to life which cannot be infringed. We support a human life amendment to the Constitution and endorse legislation to make clear that the 14th Amendment's protections apply to unborn children. I think those first two sentences encapsulate the entire thrust of the Republican Party's platform on abortion. And it's the reason that when I was seeking someone to debate on this topic, I contacted almost exclusively Republican political leaders. My opponent did not respond to my invitation, but Senator Buford was gracious enough to say yes and come out here tonight. So I appreciate that. So it's the Republican Party platform, I think, that is the key issue if we're talking about not religious matters, but if we're talking about the public policy implications of abortion. So unborn child has a fundamental individual right to life which cannot be infringed. And then a human life amendment to the Constitution, which would enshrine that in our nation's foundational document. So what would it mean if the unborn child were to be granted an individual right to life which cannot be infringed? I'm not an attorney, but I am familiar with the law, and I can read and I can think. And I'm seeking to become one of the legislators in Frankfurt who would deal with the laws all the time. I've drafted legislation myself in conjunction with help from other people, and it was on a number of different topics over the years. So I'm familiar with legal concepts. So to say that the fundamental individual right to life cannot be infringed, well, to me that means that a fertilized egg or a fetus, or at some point unspecified, would have all the rights of you or me or any American. If the person were to die somehow, it's very likely that there would need to be an investigation as to the cause of death. I mean, that's the case with anyone who dies without clear reason or without a clear set of facts, saying, for example, an automobile accident. If an unborn child were to die, there would need to be a police investigation. There would need to be witnesses called. There need to be trial, either before a judge or a jury. And our legal system would be devoted primarily to such cases, taking away resources from any other type of law enforcement activity and focusing the legal resources of the entire country on questions of fetal personhood.
Okay, is that a question, or are we going to take questions from the?
You're free to respond to that if you wish, or take questions.
Okay.
However you want to handle
it. Either way, the Republican platform does treat the unborn as a human. There's no doubt about that. I don't know that the Democrat platform treats it a different way, other than they do support the abortion issue with your federal tax dollars. I think that is the major difference. But to quote Mother Teresa, any country that accepts abortion is not teaching its people to love, but to use any violence to get what it wants. And I just have a deep feeling for a woman and an individual that's pregnant for the fetus that she carries, for I think it's an unborn child. I know it is. And in the fact that individuals believe the way they do, I think it's important for them to help when they can, not to just advocate a certain position, but do something about it. So I have involved myself in a program down in Jasmine County called All God's Children, and we accept young women, I should say young girls, because it may be hard to call them women when they're 14, 15, 16, and they're pregnant. But to accept those ladies in, and we pay for it from them having prenatal services. Many of them, their parents abused them. Their individual that they have had this child with may be abusive to them, or not even in their life, or maybe they don't know who the father really is. Those are acceptable things that happen. We don't like them, but we have to accept them. And we raise money, and we find ways we provide housing and rooms and education. We drive them back and forth to school. We take them to the events they want to go, try to get them to the ball games. And when I say we have a paid staff, and I serve on the board of that group. So I think if someone's going to take a certain position, stand in one area, they need to go out and put themselves out there to work with these individuals. And as I work with these young ladies and I see the babies delivered and the love between the mother and the child, I know that I did the right thing. I felt like I was on the right side. Because if you look around the nation, we put these abortion clinics in very poverty-stricken areas. We don't put them in the affluent areas, we put them in the poverty area. And yet, even though after we've had all of the abortions, the poverty level still seems to rise among women and children. So it's not accomplishing the issue to help individuals come out of the poor. I think what we need to do is when someone has a child, an unwanted child, let's say, that we provide every service that we can to help, to assist, to educate them, to health care, to provide health care. I'm in full favor of health care for every child from prenatal until they turn age 19. I think there should be no question as to income, socioeconomic condition. We can do that. Children are not expensive to provide health care for. Certainly there will be exceptions where there's issues. But I think those that are going to take the pro-life stand also need to take the pro-financial resource side of it and help.
I'm very happy to hear about All God's Children, the program. I think it's one of the many good things that the movement that calls itself pro-life has done. And I think it speaks very highly of your position and your willingness to work on this issue in a positive, constructive way that actually benefits the people involved, whether they are rich or poor. And it seems to me that that is a highly admirable program that you just described. I guess my concern is with the effect on our society if the Republican Party platform were to become adopted nationwide. I think that it's pretty clear that the intention of it, and it's been part of the Republican Party platform for years. This is not a new development. What's new is that my looking at it, I had not studied it before, but with the current campaign, I felt the need to find out, well, what does the GOP platform actually say? So I read those first two sentences, and I was shocked. The country would overturn Roe versus Wade within a matter of weeks. All the laws that had been based on that Supreme Court decision would be overturned. This fetal personhood amendment would have far-reaching effects on the entire society, and it would go far beyond the ability of programs such as All God's Children to deal with, because every woman who was involved in a pregnancy would become a potential crime suspect. I think that the intent of the legislation is clearly to outlaw all abortions without exception. I know, Senator Buford, you referred to exceptions for rape, and I believe you mentioned rape and incest, but the Republican platform doesn't say that. It says fundamental individual right to life which cannot be infringed. And what that says to me is if a pregnancy occurs as a result of a rape, that the unborn child would have full rights, and there's no room for infringing upon the rights of that unborn child. So what we're seeing is a very radical, far-reaching proposal that has become enshrined in the Republican Party's platform. And I guess what I'm requesting of you, Senator Buford, is to comment on that fetal personhood amendment and answer the question of whether you see anything wrong with it.
Well, obviously, as one might think, the Democrats and Republicans, the Green Party, the Libertarians, and different groups that may choose to classify themselves in those political parameters, there is no desire that I know to adopt the Republican platform into the nation of the federal government. It's just, you can't do that. I mean, you can't. You still have your parties, and you need your parties. We want to have a strong party system. I think the ideal thing is to have about, in a group of 150 of one and 50 of another. It is a balance, counterbalance. It is a check. It's good government. I find that even in the state Senate, we agree on probably 98.5% of all the legislation that comes across the floor. And even when a piece of pro-life legislation comes across the floor, there probably are only 2 dissenting votes generally. And if pro-life legislation comes, and we're predominantly Republican there, with 22 members being Republican, 15 being Democrats, and 1 independent. But even in the House, where it's more skewed, where it's about, I think it's about 42 to 58 right now, Democrats to Republicans, if a piece of pro-life legislation presents itself on the floor for a vote down there, it may go 90 to 10 and pass. So regardless of whether you're Republican or Democrat, the voices in Kentucky that are electing individuals around the state are strong in that pro-life area. And so as far as the matter that's maybe before Congress, we at the state level will not have much control over that, other than we can certainly talk to our congressmen, women, senators, and representatives. And I don't think that they will even call us to check on our opinions, because they probably already know where everyone stands. It's amazing that a U.S. senator or congressman that represents your area will almost know the position of almost every state senator or representative in their specific district. They know where that is. And I think you will find most of them voting in that area. But it's just my opinion, and Mother Teresa said, it is a poverty to decide that a child must die so you may live as you wish. I think sometimes we do sacrifice. It's a sacrifice at times to have a child. You know, I know it's very inconvenient in many cases for a woman to deliver, for a father, you know, to start to look at the financial resources of it. But it is a life, and that is just the way I feel.
Well, I would never try to convince anyone to change their belief on an issue like this, which is fundamentally a religious question. I'm running for the General Assembly, for the House, not any position as minister or pastor of any congregation. What we're differentiating the religious aspect of this from the public policy aspect of it. So one thing you said that was a bit confusing. I think I heard you say there's no desire to implement the GOP platform into federal law as written. But when I read it, those first 2 sentences, the second sentence, it says, we support a human life amendment to the Constitution and endorse legislation to make clear that the 14th Amendment's protections apply to unborn children. Right, pretty clearly, that's not a religious statement. That's a public policy, legal, political strategy statement. They support I mean, I've seen human life amendments. I've seen the wording. I've seen them drafted. And so I know what they're talking about, and they're proposing an actual law, amendment to the Constitution, that would be put into practice. So I'm trying to understand what you mean that there's no desire to implement that.
I was referring to the platform of the Republican Party would never verbatim make it into the Constitution completely. Nothing ever does. The process of any legislation that is presented, it is very rarely that, even in Frankfurt, but needless to say in Washington, where very little passes these days, but in Frankfurt, even when a bill is presented, it may end up, well, it may begin with 2 pages and end up being 20 or 30, and the language can completely change and direct itself. But I don't know of a single Republican that has any inclination that they could take the entire Republican platform, whatever it might be, and present it as a constitutional amendment are provided into that way. It's not possible, nor could the Democrat platform be presented verbatim and passed into a constitutional amendment. Constitutional amendments, first place, are very difficult to get passed. And the democracy is set that way, that we don't change the way we do government and business like a dictatorship would. If Castro wants something, it will happen tomorrow. If Mr. Obama or previous Mr. Bush wants something, they got to go to Congress. They've got to deal with Republicans and Democrat and Green Party candidates and independents if they want to have legislation that will favorably make it through there. And chances are it won't happen. That's why I think that this president has chosen so many times to do executive orders as opposed to trying to take issues to the people for a vote. That's his prerogative. He can do that. But no intention of taking the entire Republican platform and adopting it into a constitution.
Right. Well, I wasn't talking about the entire platform. I was talking about that one sentence. We support a human life amendment to the Constitution and endorse legislation to make clear that the 14th Amendment's protections apply to unborn children. Now, that's the kind of one-sentence concept that can be put into law. I'm quite familiar that the process of lawmaking can resemble the process of making sausages, and you never know what's going to come out. But that's one sentence. It's simple. It's straightforward. The meaning of it is extremely clear. And I think if we just look at the words written on paper, that one sentence, I think we need to become alarmed about it. I think it would constitute a tremendous upheaval in our country's entire legal and police system. And I guess what I'm wondering is if any Republican would be willing to say, no, they don't support that sentence.
Well, as you can imagine, in both parties, you have Democrats that are pro-life. That's not in their platform. We have Republicans that are pro-choice. That's not in their platform. There are probably Republicans that would support this. There's Democrats that would support. I don't know, there may be some Green parties and Libertarians that would support that language going into a constitution. But I can guarantee you right now, under this Congress as it exists, and I think to some degree, I think the U.S. Senate will still be predominantly controlled by the individual that is currently president of the Senate and Speaker for the Democrats, I should say, leader, Mr. Reid. They can't even pass a budget in 3 years. There's no way they could handle this language. Nothing gets out for a vote. So you don't have to worry about anything happening in the Senate. They are at a standstill. They're doing nothing for this nation at this time. It can't even get a budget passed. In Frankfurt, if we don't get a budget passed, last time we didn't take our pay. The majority of us, I think, at least in the Senate, none did. I don't want to speak for the House because they're not here. But you just can't get anything through the Senate currently when it comes to the major things of the budget. And in the budget is where language like this would be, whether funding would be provided or not provided for abortions on the federal level.
Let me broaden the focus just a little bit. I think we've covered that issue of the Republican Party platform. What I want to do is show a chart that I got from the internet, which talks about abortion rates in various countries, regions of the world. And what we've got is a number of regions of the world. On this side, close to me, we have the countries and regions of the world where abortion laws are liberal. And that includes North America, U.S., Canada. It includes Western Europe. On the other side, near Dan, we've got the regions of the world where the abortion laws are highly restrictive, and very few women have access to abortion services in that part of the world. In those widespread parts of the world, we've got a trend line there that is pretty much flat, which suggests that when you make abortion illegal, the rate of abortion does not go down. And that includes both legal and illegal abortions. In other words, what happens is women seek out illegal abortions, unsafe abortions. More women die in the regions of the world where it's illegal. Now, if you look at it carefully, you can see that the line actually tilts upward a little bit toward the illegal part of the world, meaning that the number of abortions actually slightly increases as you make it, as you add more and more legal restrictions and make it more and more difficult for women to obtain abortions. The rate actually increases. There's a correlation there. And the causation factors are not shown on this graph. Causation factors have mainly to do with the availability of contraception services. So what I want to talk about briefly is the entire strategy of the Right to Life movement over the past several decades has been to try to make abortion illegal, to try to add more and more legal restrictions. And what we see from data all around the world is that that does not work. It's a counterproductive, failed strategy. What you've got is no decrease in the number of abortions, possibly a slight increase, and more women dying from unsafe, illegal abortions. So the strategy doesn't work. The entire legal strategy that has been the basis of the Right to Life organizations throughout the country needs to be re-examined, I think, needs to be challenged, and needs to be reversed into more of a situation where you've got comprehensive education, contraceptive services, and every child being wanted, every child a wanted child. That's probably the most effective way to reduce the number of abortions worldwide.
Did you have a specific question? I'm sorry. I'm just watching.
I'll put it in the form of a question. Do you agree that there's a need to look at the fundamental strategy behind the Right to Life movement, Right to Life organization, and say, and question whether you're on the right track?
Well, I think that certainly as human beings are, as they are, Republicans and Democrats need to question both sides. Talk to both sides, see what their feelings are, kind of as we're doing here tonight. I see nothing wrong with defending one's position on a certain specific issue. So the public can question. It's America. In many of those countries, they can't question that. They can't have a discussion about it. There's no doubt about that. Many times they talk about our healthcare industry here and how we have more deaths through birthing. Well, we do have some deaths, a lot of deaths through birthing, of course, because we report them. In many of those countries that are on there, if the mother dies, it doesn't get reported. If the mother goes missing, it doesn't get reported. The child, there's no indication. So when you look at some of these graphs and these things that come out, I don't want us to neglect them because I think they deserve discussion. But just because it's on the internet doesn't necessarily mean it might be right. I think of the one ad where the woman says, "I want you to meet my boyfriend. He's from France." And he comes up and says, "Bonjour, bonjour," in a redneck accent. So I don't know that you always get the right debates over the internet, but I think that if you are not approving of one side or the other, go and question them. Go and talk to them. Go to those individuals that are funded and draw salaries to do Right to Life or pro-choice. I think that's the American way to handle it. And I don't, I mean, I can't disagree with the numbers that are here because I don't have any other facts on it. But I do know that in many countries, they don't report and they certainly do not treat their women and children properly. And I don't have to tell you what nations those are. Thank you.
Maybe it'd be a good time to have some questions. What do you think?
But of course.
Questions from the audience?
What is your all's opinion on the fact that a woman's issue is being decided on with the average white males?
This has always been an issue throughout the course of the development of this country. When the individuals that signed the Declaration of Congress and those individuals that drew the first Constitution in the Declaration, they were all extremely wealthy, prominent, white individuals, never thought the word slavery was an issue. Yes, and the majority of them had slaves. And even as going back to 1942, when we adopted the Pledge of Allegiance into our schools, the individual that had initially written the Pledge of Allegiance, they had to take out the word that talked about equality, because equality would have meant men, women, and African Americans were equal. And they knew that the school superintendents would never allow it to come within the school. That is disgusting in today's mentality. Luckily, our formats have changed. But we do need to encourage more women, and they are getting more involved, not only in politics, but in issues, social issues that come about. And I see that happening. However, sometimes when I see a woman that runs for a high office, I hear some very degrading remarks by the other party, and that's most unfortunate that they decide that they can talk like that and act like that, because if they said it to that man, he would probably come across the table, and it wouldn't be pleasant. But women are becoming more educated. They are now becoming, just over the past 10 years, there are more women graduating from undergraduate classes and getting master's degrees than there are men. So I think we're on the verge of a twist here. I think that you will see over the next 30 years, 40 years, this changing considerably. That this won't, for a very long period of time, be a white man's rule, shall we say. Now, when you go into Frankfurt, you will notice that the majority of the legislators there, I would say, are pretty much middle, average, working class, as are the men and women. There are exceptions to that. But now I do agree with you, when you get to Congress, it's different. They go in, they're going to go up there and clean the swamp, and pretty soon they think it's a pretty nice hot tub. They're making $170,000 a year. Insurance is all paid for their family. They have a hospital and clinic, doctors on hand, zero deductible on prescriptions and medical. But yet they want you and all of us to operate under a different program. They are not going to operate under Obamacare. So that is a problem. But all of those individuals, I noticed kind of when they come out of Congress, not only do they get a huge pension of about $105,000 a year for life, but they also are drawing $170,000 a year while they're there, plus the benefits of travel and events and things that they do. It's no wonder that this government borrows 40% of every dollar that it spends. And I think if some women went up there, it wouldn't be like that. I think there'd be some changes, because it is a difference not only of philosophy, but of an individual woman who has sat back and watched this, and she's had it up to here. And she wants people to get together. She wants wars to come to an end. She wants taxes to be reasonable, fair, and equitable. And I see so many individuals in the lobbying area that are battling that crime, I say, against the taxpayers to get more for their side. But you're right, the women need to have a stronger voice in everything in Washington. And that has been happening to some degree. In the Senate, we have a lady that's in leadership on one of the sides. They don't have that in the House, but we do on the Senate side. And we have women that chair committees on the Senate side. I think I'm trying to think, there probably is a woman on the House side that chairs a committee. I can't think of it offhand. But in the Senate, we have 2, maybe 3 that are chaired by women. So it works. They can do it. It's not a problem.
Yeah, I would agree with a great deal of that. I just want to point out that the candidate for president and vice president of the Green Party are Jill Stein and Sherry Honkala. I think they're the best candidates running, and that the country would be vastly better off if they were elected. And so, we folks in the Green Party spent a tremendous amount of effort getting their names on the ballot, and thanks to the way things turned out, Jill Stein's name for president will be on every ballot in Kentucky on November 6th.
Yeah, so I mean, abortion is obviously a federal issue. Like, how exactly does the state become involved with abortion? Like, what issues does the state government face related to abortion?
Well, the state government has faced certain issues. Within the state program, we do not provide funding, for abortions. Now, if it's a rape or a life of the mother, certainly, and that's Medicaid. You have to deal with this. You have to let the doctor and the woman work this issue out. There's no doubt about that. But issues would be one that was passed, I think, by a Democrat in the House, Representative Dameron, about four years ago, I believe, something called fetal homicide. If, let's say there's a woman is murdered or a car accident, alcohol driver coming, and she's pregnant and the child dies, then that is considered a homicide, that you have killed, not only the mother, but the child she was bearing. Those are two issues. There no doubt are others, but those are the ones. For the most part, though, the House usually doesn't allow the abortion issues to come out for a vote. They do some. Don't want to ridicule them. They have their reasons, and I don't want to state why I think they should, because they're not here to defend themselves. And they've got a reason, and I'm sure if you met with them, they would give that to you.
I would just add that the states, including Kentucky, can and do add small legal restrictions around abortion. Some states require certain words to be said by doctors to women who are wanting to end their pregnancy. Certain states require doctors to show them ultrasound. That law was proposed in Kentucky. I don't think it's passed at this point, but it may come back again. States can kind of have an effect around the edges. And I think that based on this data, which is not anything unusual. 10 years ago, if I'd come along and run for office 10 years ago and looked it up, that same general pattern would have held. So this is not new. This is not a new phenomenon whereby adding legal restrictions to abortion does not lower the abortion rate. That's been well known for a long time. So it's not a question of finding something strange on the internet and making a chart out of it. So states can play a role. They can either fund abortions for poor women or not. I would, if elected, I would support funding for abortions as well as comprehensive contraceptive services and other reproductive services for all women, rich or poor.
Any other questions on that? Yes, ma'am.
I guess I have two kinds of things that are rumbling through my head right now. One is, if men were to get pregnant and women were not, being that men, like men, rich men, are in power, do you think that our outcomes or our topics of discussion today would be particular? Do you think they'd be any different than they are?
I don't know. I can't say one way or the other. But certainly, to take one example, of different cancers, ovarian cancer, breast cancer, cancers that are predominantly those of women, we spend a lot of time and we devote many resources to it because it needs to be done. They certainly make some strides in prostate cancer. There's no doubt about that. Men do get breast cancer, regardless of what some may think. But we are always very active and vigilant on those areas. My thoughts are that the position of the thoughts upon it in Congress or in states would not change much. I know what you're thinking, and I don't disagree with you that women might have a different perspective overall. But when I go to the yes, ma'am. When I go to the pro-life rallies that are at Frankfurt, it is predominantly women. that are out there. Obviously, I don't want to say that the men are not interested in, but, you know, and when I go to I don't go, but when I stand and watch from the window, see the pro-choice rally out there, it's predominantly women. So it is a major issue of I think, the female on both sides, you know, but might be handled differently if women, you know, were in charge. Let's face it, you know, you come with that perspective more than I do, and I appreciate that comment.
The second comment I have is I really appreciate that you spend time with women, girls, young women who are making the choice to keep their babies when they're pregnant, find out if they need help. Do you spend at all any time with women who are making another kind of choice?
At times, yes. They'll come to my office and want to know, you know, issues of Medicaid, sometimes disability insurance, and then I will put them in touch with the proper sources to try to deal with them as I would with an individual, a young lady trying to find out how to have her child. So I wouldn't neglect them. They're young individuals, and regardless of whether they have my beliefs, my political affiliation or not, they're a human being. They're an American. They're a Kentuckian. They're a part of this world, and I should dedicate all the time I can to them. And yes, I will help them.
I pretty much agree with Senator Buford on this point. I think the movement to make all abortion illegal, the call it anti-abortion movement or the right to life movement, I think would exist regardless of who is getting pregnant. And I think the senator's right about the makeup of both the pro-life and the pro-choice movements, a lot of women involved in leadership positions. The framing of the issue might be different. There could be differences. I believe the director of the Kentucky Right to Life organization his name is Diana Maldonado. Is that okay? Yeah, both. I'm kind of dissatisfied with both terms. I think people who support Planned Parenthood, let me back up a minute. Planned Parenthood, I think, is a highly effective organization at reducing the number of abortions that occur. And the way they do it primarily is by making contraceptive methods available widely, regardless of income level. They do it by providing objective, scientific-based information on reproduction to everyone. And they do it by providing a full range of reproductive services, including abortion services when that is necessary or when that is the agonizing choice that a woman or a couple have come to and feel that they need to do that. So I think the best way to reduce abortion is the Planned Parenthood strategy. I believe that the Right to Life movement does some good things, and we've heard some of them tonight. They also do a good job on adoption. And I would like to see, if I'm elected, I'd like to see these organizations working together where they agree, trying to find common ground, supporting each other's efforts that lead in a positive direction, and not see so much of this hostility, endless fighting, bickering over resources. I think anyone who's doing good work should be supported.
Yes, I don't have, Planned Parenthood is there. They're going to be there. I don't see any laws changing. My only objection is they should be, both sides fund them equally, whereas Planned Parenthood gets your federal tax dollar now. And I think that Planned Parenthood has gotten, as pro-life, both sides have gotten heavily involved in politics on their side. One is government funded, the other one is not. That's the only thing I can say.
Questions?
Hypothetically, which would be a long shot that either party would be successful in achieving anything in Congress at this date and time. But if they did, certainly you would have to discuss the preventative measures and the safeguards, as to regulate, oneself, I suppose. You hate to say regulate, hate to talk about people like they're machines, but the fact that they would take responsibility for their life. And if they are going to create a fetus, they need to have first thought, make that choice before they decided to do that. It's a very important issue. And I know that doesn't strike us when we're 16, 17 years old and the dance is on, 14, 13. We've had 12-year-olds in this state deliver babies. Those are not thoughts. So education has to be there. There has to be some education in the schools, and it has to start sooner than 9th grade.
I think we should learn from what works. I think we should use peer-reviewed studies to determine social science to determine which programs achieve the best results, and we should emulate those. We should look at Western Europe, which has approximately equally liberal abortion laws as the United States and Canada, but a lower rate of abortions. Well, how do they accomplish that? We should learn from other countries, we should learn from other cultures, and we should learn from our own country where we have successful programs. Let's replicate those and spread them more widely. Related topic that is likely to come up because one of the individuals who's not here tonight, Representative Stan Lee, has promised that he will introduce legislation in the next session. He talked to a reporter saying that essentially reinforcing the existing policy in Kentucky, which is not to provide federal funds or Medicare funds to women who want to have abortions. And that the impact on that is mostly on poor women because wealthy women are able to afford whatever services they need. So it would have a primarily main impact on poorer women. I oppose that legislation. If I'm elected, I would not vote for it. I'm just wondering if that bill comes before you for a vote, Senator, would you be voting for Stan Lee's bill or not?
Well, I believe we're dealing with Medicaid. Medicare is for those that are 65, but you never know. There could be one of those immaculate conceptions come. But with Medicaid, I don't believe that the House, they've And those bills have been presented before, and the House leadership never allows them to come even in the committee for a hearing. So the debate will be stifled likely. Now, that's not to say the Republicans won't gain control of the House. I mean, there's always, it's only about 8 or 9 votes away, 9 votes, I guess, away from doing so. That could make a change in the vote on the House floor. Now, if that bill did come to the House floor, it would pass, even with a majority of Democrats voting for it. Yes, I would support, and what I think Stan Lee is referring to is the Obamacare, that would your tax dollars be used for abortions. Now we have, and the reason, there's certain groups, as I say, the Catholic Conference, that Catholic health care, they provide their own health care. Baptists provide their own health care. They do not want that to be part of their health care rules. Now, that is all being developed currently. We do not know how that will pan out even at this time. There's the health care exchange being proposed and is being developed in Frankfurt at a cost of $67 million to develop this. Will they include it in the 3 or 4 plans that are out there? Will they have to include it? There are still some debatable issues on whether the states and those certain religious forms would have to. Mr. Obama said they would not have to when he presented the Obamacare, but it turns out the language indicates that it would have to be provided.
With regard to fostering dialogue on these issues, I have to admit I had a hard time setting up this forum tonight. Again, I want to say my appreciation to Senator Buford for coming and talking about these serious issues. But I issued an invitation to all 65 Republican members of the Kentucky House of Representatives and the Kentucky Senate. And you were the only one who responded positively. Right, no, I mean, that's exactly right. Right, we don't agree with each other, but opening the discussion, I feel, is very important. I went to the Lexington office of Right to Life, Kentucky Right to Life, and tried to set up a meeting with the director, with the local director. I was able to have a good conversation with the office manager, who had been there something like 30 years, been a volunteer on her own time for 30 years in that office. Wonderful conversation. But I would have appreciated being able to talk with the leadership of that organization. I'm considering joining the organization in order to bring up the point that I feel that the entire strategy is misguided. Trying to make abortions illegal is the wrong way to go. It does not lead us to a reduced abortion rate, as the data shows. What it does lead to is more women dying in illegal, unsafe abortions. And I think the entire strategy needs to be questioned and changed so that it's more in line with a comprehensive, science-based approach.
I don't know that I need to make a closing statement, but I want to thank you all for being here tonight. It's good to see you. Come. Oh, okay. Or we need to gather and talk about things like this. I mean, there's taxes, education, health care, the wars that are going on. I mean, this is a difficult time for Americans. It's a difficult time for our jobs, our economy. There's a lot at risk today for us, but mostly for our children and those children that we are talking about that aren't even born yet, because they're going to inherit $130,000 in debt if they're born today. We're over $6 trillion in debt. We borrow 40% of every dollar we spend in this nation. And we have to start to live like real people, not like, charging Visa to pay MasterCard one day. These bills have to be paid. We are going in the direction of the European countries, and they have just gone bankrupt in trying to move in the direction of the United States from the 60s and 50s. They're trying to get into those economies. So we have a lot to learn, or maybe we have a lot to remember. But whatever we do, we're all part of it. We're all in this together, and we'll all be in this together for a long time. At least I hope I survive several more years, because all of you look a lot younger than me, and I depend on you to see that this country and this state operate properly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Preston, for
Yeah, thanks very much.